the one source, Sports Card Nation. The hobby is the people. Sports Card Nation.
What is up, everybody? Welcome to episode 389 of Sports Card Nation. Happy to be back. As always, wanted to right off the top thank our sponsors, Iron Sports Cards, Sports Collectors Digest, Hobby Hotline, Upper Deck, and a new sponsor will be joining us very soon here. So excited for that. Got a great guest. I read about this guest or heard about this guest and what he was doing with some shows and kind of what he was about. Did not know him whatsoever. I've gotten to know him a little bit since having him, recording this conversation with him. But he's doing things, if you know what I do for my 9 to 5, if you will, I work with special education as a teaching assistant. So, kids on the spectrum and that sort of thing I'm very familiar with. And this gentleman is doing a show, this is not all he's doing, but it's the one thing that stood out. He's doing a show believed to be the first show ever geared towards, folks with disabilities and things that make it tough to go to a regular show, if you will. So his name is Nick Barton. He goes under the business name or DBA as MeanDaddy Sports Cards, and he's the furthest thing from mean. And if you listen to the episode, you'll find out where the Mean Daddy actually came from. But he's not mean. He's actually doing some great things in the hobby. And you know me, I always like to highlight and spotlight that as much as possible. So I reached out to Nick. He agreed to come on. And this week and next episode, we will have those conversations, which I think you'll find enjoyable. So with that being said, let's get the show started. All right, real excited to have the guest on in the Sports Card Nation guest line that I have. He's doing some big things, and he's doing some big things with kids in mind, and that's really important to me as someone who got started in the hobby as a 7-year-old kid many, many moons ago. Scary to say, but it is what it is. But I'm happy to be joined by Nick Barton, MeanDaddy Cards. Welcome, sir.
Hey, thanks for having me, John. Appreciate it. Looking forward to hanging out.
Yeah, again, thank you. I know you're a busy guy making some time for us. And another thank you, too. I know you served this country in the military. So thank you for your service there as well.
Hey, thank you for your support. I appreciate that. Thank you.
So, anytime someone first comes on the show, and I have people back on, but the first time anyone's on, it's kind of our standard startup podcast question, like when and how did the hobby start?
All right, that's a great question. So I started out as a collector really, really young, probably like 4 or 5. My grandfather was big into collecting, as was his father, my great grandfather. So my grandfather used to bring me I don't know if you remember Kmart or if there was a Kmart in your area, but there was a Kmart near our house. My grandfather used to get blaster boxes from Kmart once in a while and bring them over. And I always loved opening them. And I loved looking for Phillies players, Eagles players that we watched together on TV. And that was one of the many things we bonded over. And then he started passing some stuff down to me. I have a autographed football by the first Eagles team to ever go to a Super Bowl. I have a Peyton Manning football, I think's behind me here. From his draft days, just stuff like that was really special, and not only cemented that bond with my grandfather, but also just my love for collecting and the hobby and sports, and that's how I got started.
Yeah, and I love that. For me, it was my grandfather as well. I'm a New York City kid originally, now in Syracuse, and going to that corner store, and I like you, I was a sports kid, and so I knew about sports, and then I learned hey, they make these athletes and players on cardboard and cards, and the rest is history. As a 7-year-old kid in 1979, with 1979 Topps pack, I think the fourth or fifth card in was a Reggie, and the rest is history. And so, I love those family bonds and the nostalgia aspect of it. I know you have two young kids of your own. Are they old enough to participate in the hobby at this point?
Yeah, so my son's 4, and he started out with Pokemon. So I'm learning. Well, I guess relearning. I collected them when I was a kid too, because I was a kid in the '90s, early 2000s.
Yeah.
So I collected them, and now I'm getting to do it again with him, which is really awesome because I get to see the joy in his face. He loves opening packs, and he's funny. He loves to chase Charmander and Charizard. Those are his two favorites. So it's a lot of fun just getting to see him kind of live that, and I'm getting to live it now as the father. I already lived it as a kid, obviously, and then my daughter is 9 months old. So she's not quite ready yet, but she does like to chew on cards occasionally, so she can get her hand on
Yeah, my dog likes to do that. My son's 26, so he doesn't do that anymore. But no, that's funny. But yeah, and I again, those stories of sharing the hobby with loved ones, whether it be sons or daughters, grandsons, uncles. It really, maybe stories are similar, but they're not always exactly alike. So you can correct me if you're wrong. I know you kind of touched on it already, kind of when you started when you were a kid, you were pretty much like heavy into like the local, like your Philly heroes.
Yep. Yeah.
Did
I
anyone?
always. Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
Go.
go ahead. No, go
I
ahead.
was just. I was just say. I always. Yeah. I always collected like local Philly guys. I actually. So my grandfather, this is kind of like bad from a kid from Philly, but like my grandfather loved Derek Jeter, so I grew up loving to watch Derek Jeter. Just him and Chase Utley were my two favorite baseball players, and I loved how hard they played. They never took a day off. They played every game. They put their bodies in the line. I loved how they played the game, and I always tried to emulate that as a kid, and for as long as I could play sports. Obviously, I was not a pro athlete, so didn't quite make it there. But yeah, I used to collect like Jeter cards. Mickey Morandini was one of our favorite players. I love Brian Dawkins. Yeah, so a lot of Philly heavy players, with a couple other guys mixed in that we love to watch. Whether they were, a lot of them just hard nosed guys, not necessarily Hall of Famers, but
Yeah, I think it shows, probably a little bit of your own personal work ethic that you gravitate towards guys like that who, hustle, play in, play out, don't take days off, maybe even play hurt, where others wouldn't, right? I feel that I'm like that myself, and it's a different era now, right? Especially when we look at like the NBA with load management, and I think with like someone buying tickets, a dad buying tickets, let's say, to take his son to a Lakers game to see like LeBron before he retires here, and he took a night off, right? And for what that night might cost with tickets and travel and all that goes along with it, right? We didn't have to worry too much during our era, even though I'm a little older than you, but even during your era, coming after mine, right? These guys, a lot of them or most of them, played as long as they could get on the field or the court. They played, and that era is sort of getting that era and that mentality is sort of kind of we're seeing less of it in today's day and age. It is what it is, but I appreciate kind of the era I grew up with, where that wasn't so much the case as we see it now. So I get the Jeter thing, even like you said, being a Philly guy, and even me being a New York City kid. I had players that weren't Mets or Yankees, let's say, that I was fans of. Even growing up, like a guy like Ken Griffey Jr. was a guy I followed a lot. Just not necessarily a Mariners fan, but just a guy would run through a wall, play defense, and could hit, right.
yep.
5 tool, could run, especially pre-injuries, and just had fun playing the game, right. Hat backwards, blowing bubble gum bubbles, and just you could tell like he probably would have did it for free, if there wasn't a paycheck involved. And as we both know, played during an era where steroids and performance enhancing drugs became an issue, but yet his name was never mentioned. He was never in any allegations. And when you look up his numbers, Nick, for what he did during that era, all natural, like even all the more impressive to
Yeah.
me. So to this day, like even as a show dealer, I always try to pick up Griffey cards to have available. I think he's one of those guys that still transcends. Like can go from one era to the next, and even kids today, even though most of them still know who Ken Griffey Jr. is, even though they may not have been alive during his active years. So I appreciate guys like that. So I get it. You can go off your favorite team if you admire a player for whatever reason. I kind of mentioned Griffey, but there's really no wrong reason if it moves your meter. So I get that. To talk about the nostalgia factory, right? You talked about with your your grandfather and now with your own kids and doing shows, right? We'll get into that even a little bit more, but sometimes I think the older folks in the hobby, we most likely were introduced to the hobby by someone older, whether it be a relative, a friend, whatever the case may be. And I still think that happens. I don't think that's a lost art, but I think it's less prevalent now because of some dollar signs and maybe people in it for different reasons. But I love that nostalgia part of the hobby where, I remember 1979 and those first 3 packs of 79 baseball. Kind of talk about, with your own family and then now as a dad yourself, the importance of that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that actually, I want to say one thing first. You mentioned
Yep.
Griffey. Just to touch back on that real quick, like I grew up in Philly, and you know what? We were all still running around with our hats on backwards, trying to emulate his beautiful, perfect swing, and blowing bubble gum. Like he affected kids across the country,
Yep.
and I think that ties in with the nostalgia and some of these guys. All those guys are my age now. We have kids and they have their favorite players and stuff like that. But I think that it's really cool how people don't realize that these athletes can really change people's lives. And then as far as the nostalgia with the collecting goes, I mean that's one of the big reasons I started this. I've always loved collecting. I knew that when obviously my son's older than my daughter, when my son got old enough, hopefully he'd like it too, and I would introduce him to that. But I also had a lot of other friends and people that are my age that are having kids, some neighbors, and their kids were interested in Pokemon or whatever. And some people collected as a kid and stopped. Some people opened Pokemon cards when they were a kid and then never touched them again. Mom threw them out or whatever. And I was getting a lot of questions because people knew that I've always collected and stuff like that. And the first thing you do if you go on Instagram and Google, sports cards or card collecting, you're going to see $20,000 deals, $40,000 deals, and the average person is going to look at that and say, "Yeah, this isn't. I can't find it. Like I don't have that kind of extra money laying around." And that's just not the case in my opinion. You don't have to. There's. I don't even like. That's not my lane. I like to collect guys that I like and like for example, I love Stadium Club. I think they're some of the best looking baseball cards. And I know they're not worth the most, but I don't care. Like I think the photography is great. And
Yep.
um,
We're really cut from the same cloth. Not to cut you off, Nick. Like
sure.
Stadium Club's one of my favorite brands of all time too. Just like you said, with the photography and the gloss, and it's just much like the name implies, right? Stadium Club. You feel like with that photography, you feel like you're at the game with a lot of the action shots and the close ups and that sort of thing. So yeah, I echo that Stadium Club sentiment. But sorry to cut you out, but I definitely wanted to wave that pennant too with you.
No, I'm glad there's other stadium clubbers out there. There's nothing like hitting like a members only or something. They're so fun to hit.
Yeah, first
It's
day issues, like
Yep.
it's well put, and I'm glad it's still around, right? In the time where we're seeing some brands, be discontinued, and now with the licensing and all that, Stadium Club has kind of stood the test of time, and I'm glad to see. And they've made some minor changes with it, Nick, but it's really pretty similar to the Stadium Club we grew up on.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, I'm a huge fan of that particular like set. I really love everything about it. And some of the photography is amazing. Like the specifically one of the newer ones people might have seen is the Vladimir Guerrero Jr. with the Toronto like Space Needle in the background.
Yeah,
That's cool. There's so many cool ones with that. But yeah, I mean, a lot. Like I said, I grew up to it never had anything to do with the value of the cards. Like I wanted to collect players that I liked, and like half time I didn't even know if it was a rookie card or like I was just excited if I got a Mickey Morandini card or whatever. And I want people to be able to experience that, both parents and children. And I don't want people to be discouraged because they feel like they can't afford it. And that's like I said, that's one of the big reasons why I started Daddy Cards. I just figured it could be a good place to hopefully encourage others to kind of join this awesome community that has done a lot for me in my life, to be completely honest. And yeah, I wanted to let people know and have a place to go to when they go out on Instagram or whatever to see that like you can, go to a card show for. I mean, if you we give away a lot of tickets to card shows, like sometimes you can go for free. And then you can take a $20 bill to a card show and have a blast hunting value bins and stuff like that. And
yeah.
it's not about the monetary value of the card. Find people that you and your child like to watch on TV in real life. Or, maybe someone that was special to you growing up as a kid, like a Ken Griffey Jr. And that could be the way that you introduce your child to who Ken Griffey Jr. is. There's endless possibilities with that.
Yeah, no doubt. And very well said, Nick, too, right? For every expensive Ken Griffey Jr. card, and there are expensive Kendrick, and I'm using him as example because we're both talking about him.
Sure.
You can buy Ken Griffey Jr. cards for $1. They're Ken Griffey Jr. cards, as you just said, in value boxes, in dollar boxes. So not every Ken Griffey Jr. card is unobtainable, and you can get even everyone thinks about the 89 upper deck, right? His 89 Fleer, his 89 Donruss rated rookie can be had for between $3 and $7 at some shows. So even a young kid who's getting into Griffey or learning about him, or through a relative or a friend that's let them know about him, even they could still get a rookie card in this particular case with this particular athlete. So
you are listening to the Sports Card Nation podcast. We'll be right back after this break.
Iron Sports Cards is your #1 source for all your PSA and other grading submissions. Their elite status improves turnaround times. Heck, they even provide the card savers. Their chat rooms provide updates on all your submissions. They also offer wax options and single cards to cover all the bases. Check them out on Facebook at Iron Sports Cards Group or on the web at ironsportscards.com, or even give them a call at 1-877-IRON-PSA. Rob's got you covered.
We are back.
I know that's a big topic in the hobby, that, the pricing and what things are going for are sort of pricing kids out of the hobby. Now, I agree I think there's some truth to that, but still, if a kid really wants to enjoy the hobby, there's ways to do it, much like you said, bargain bins, dollar bins. I know myself as a dealer, Nick, I usually have free packs with me at every show. A kid comes up to my table. I try to give them a free pack when I have them available. And so there's always, and I hope it never happens, but the hobby, I think, can be enjoyed by everyone. It's just different ways to do it. I know you talked a little bit about it already with the bargain boxes and things, but as a dad, like you said, a 9-year-old and doing shows, what are ways where a kid can still participate, be active in the hobby, and we talk about those 5-figure deals and 6-figure deals, and people like to talk about them, but like you said earlier, it's really a small percentage of the overall hobby, right? It might make more news and more noise in the kitchen, but it's probably 10% of the hobby, maybe even less. We just hear about it a lot. So for someone like yourself, that as a dealer, as a dad of a kid that collects, if someone asked you, hey, what advice would you give more for my son or daughter to still participate in the hobby? We don't have a ton of discretionary income. So how can we do it? Like how would you answer the question? I know we mentioned bargain bins and stuff like that, but even in addition to that.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of ways. One of the things you mentioned as a vendor, I do the same thing. I have packs that I give away for free when I can. I started to give away like just individual cards to people as the kids as they come up, especially if it's like their first card show, whatever. And the hobby community, some people have been by my table or at my table to overhear that, and I've had people just donate cards and say, "Hey, give this to the next kid that comes up." And I literally now have a huge stack of cards, and when kids come up, I say, "Hey, what team do you like?" Or, take a look at these cards and pick a card so you can remember your first show, stuff like that. I think that all of us as a whole can help these kids and give cards to them just to help start their collection. The value bins obviously are a good option. One thing I would tell parents specifically is, when kids are getting it, don't make it be about value. Make it be about the card. I like the photography. I like the special jersey they're wearing. They're wearing a City Connect jersey instead of a regular one or whatever. Find cards that are in your budget, but also meaningful and maybe even rare, because there are rare cards that are not that expensive of players, great players and not so great players. And really, like the hunt to me is fun. It really means a lot more when like you really had to put in a lot of work to track down a certain card at a certain price. You go and get it. And I would also say don't worry about grading. Obviously a PSA 10 is worth more than anything else pretty much, aside from like a black label. But I don't like you don't have to get pristine like just because somebody says this card's pristine doesn't mean that that's gospel or that's law. You know what I mean? So I think like those things are definitely a good way. I think that the one thing where people that say kids are getting priced out is tough, is with just the prices of the card, like the packs on open sealed wax. But part of that is that they do make sets that are cheaper to acquire, like Score Football, for example. So it just depends. I mean, I think if you make it less about what the value of the cards are and more about the player or some special reason that, like some cards have celebrities in the backgrounds, pictures in the stands or whatever. So, just find something that's meaningful. And if you collect things that are meaningful, you'll never get tired of them and you don't have to worry about what the value is because they mean something to you.
Yeah, no doubt, and well said. And even hearing you talk about that, I've done that too, right? Or a kid will come with a parent, and they're looking, and I'll be like, who are you looking for? Anything in particular? And the kid might, hey, my favorite player, so and so, and I'll find a card somewhere in my inventory and hand it to them. And sometimes it'd be like, how much is it? And I'll be like, no, that's my gift to you today, and enjoy the hobby and that sort of thing. And it doesn't like I know I'm preaching to the choir here, Nick. It doesn't obviously hurt me, and that could be the difference. Not to be dramatic, but those kind of moments can be the difference whether that young person like stays in the hobby or doesn't, right? And pays it forward as they get older and stay in the hobby and have more discretionary income as they get older, and they can pay that forward as well. I love to do that as much as I can. I think we're seeing more of that. I think some of that is contagious. Another point you made, which I think is a good one, I think it's on the card manufacturers and especially Topps and Fanatics now with holding 3 of the 4 major sport license, right? To still make products that are affordable to the younger collectors that may not have the money of an older person who has a job, and even those folks are having sometimes purchasing some of these wax products as they go past 4 figures or even in some cases 5 figures with some of your higher brands like Transcendent and those sort of things. So I hope they keep making those products where kids, not only making them though, Nick, too, is making sure that they're not going to that secondary, as much as they can control that, not going to that secondary market and keeping them affordable even on that level, almost like SRP. And really, we don't want to see this selling for more than this. And, I know breaking's a big thing in the industry. I've said it numerous times for many years, right? It's probably saved the wax industry. There was a point where wax was not selling like we know it today, and some things were collecting dust. That doesn't even occur anymore because people buying the breaks for bowling cards or cornhole, like nothing doesn't like really not sell as long as the price point makes sense. So I like to see even maybe more breaks. I know some people might say this is sacrilegious, but really cheap ones where a kid can sort of get that same, adrenaline rush and not break the bank. But again, nothing beats opening the pack right yourself and seeing those cards in your own hand. I don't think anything will replicate that. So I think some of that, as you pointed out, is on the card manufacturer to try to maintain that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I agree with it about like just having the cards. There's something having the cards in your hand, opening the packs. I remember doing it as a kid, even with like buddies. We'd get a couple dollars together and ride to the local card shop and get a couple packs, and that was always a blast. I think that's an important thing. Go to your local card shops and see. Just talk to the guys that are in there, and look. Most card shops have dollar boxes in there as well as sealed wax from every level and price point pretty much. And you can get what works for you and get to open some packs. I mean, the joy of opening a pack is up there for me for sure.
Yeah, I've said it. To me, it's how I got started. Again, 1979 with 379 tops baseball packs, and right, just never knowing what might come out of that pack. And listen, I'm old enough where I started when there was no parallels and colored cards and beam teams and kabooms and downtowns. Right, it was
Yeah.
just base cards and rookie cards. And growing up in New York at that time, Reggie Jackson was like the toast in New York, Mr. October, and pulling that card in the first pack, like the fourth or fifth card in, and I was hooked. The rest is the history. Every if I got any allowance I got, I went to that store and bought those packs. And there's something to be said too. Yeah, you can buy stuff online. You never have to leave your house. eBay and other selling platforms. But nothing can replace the in-person. I always say this, and I think you'll agree, Nick. Nothing can replace that in-person transaction, whether that be at an LCS or a card show, right? Where you have those conversations, where you can learn something from somebody. And that's both ways. I learned stuff from somebody, and then I maybe be able to teach someone something that they didn't know, right? And we're always learning, right? And I don't care how long you've been in the hobby, and in my case, over 40 years, I learned something about the hobby every day. And much like you said, I don't deal in Pokemon cards, but just from being at the shows and talking to the kids, and not even just kids, but even older people, I've learned a lot about Pokemon cards. I'm, nowhere as knowledgeable as people who collect them, but I know more today than I did 2-3 years ago or further back. So, you don't get that, but at home behind a computer necessarily. There's something about that in person, right? And if you're buying a card, right, seeing it right there in front of you to look at it and not looking at a picture on the screen and hope that's the same card you get, and there's no funny business going on. So nothing will ever replace. If I have a choice of buying the same card or opening the same pack, in person or online, it's going to be in person all the time, right? You can't replace those social interactions and in person socialization. And I think it's important that we don't lose sight of that. Maybe I'm the old man on the porch because that's all we had when I started. There was no internet in 1979, and obviously no social media and no online platforms like we see today. And I'm glad I kind of I appreciate what we have now, but I'm glad that I didn't start in there, because I think you appreciate it more because of that. So, I mean, as a show guy and talk about sort of that in person versus, because of much of what I just talked touched on.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, so many things there. I got to catch the tail end of the no internet era, obviously the 90s and stuff like that. So I have some memory of it. But no, nothing beats the in-person. Like that, the community is part of this, right? Getting to meet new people. I mean, I've met so many awesome people just like that were randomly assigned a table next to me, and we just hit it off, started talking, and that's been amazing. We had a guy that we gave, he won one of our contests for giving away tickets to a show. And he ended up coming to the show and coming up to my table, and we were talking. He said, "Yeah, I've always wanted to come to a show, but this many people are, I feel overwhelmed and anxious. But I figured that, like, hey, I got these tickets for free. Like, let me go try it out. And if I don't like it, and nothing lost." And he's like, "I'm having the best time. Like, this is going to be something that I do regularly now." And that, to me, that's so important. I never want to be the reason that any person, a kid or an adult, says, "You know what? That guy was a bad experience. I never want to come to a card show." I want to be the complete opposite of that. I want people to have a good time and enjoy it and see that there are good people. There's plenty of good people in the hobby, and everywhere, right? There's good and bad people everywhere. But I want to try to be someone that, props up the hobby in this community and wants more people to join it, feel welcomed, and enjoy the ride that it is.
Yeah, well said, and I agree. And there is just some and it's not even just applies to the hobby, Nick, but no matter what different hobbies you're in, or even in work forces, right? Being in the room with people who kind of share the same passions or likes that you have, right? It's you feel like you're in the same fraternity. You can't get that when you're in. You can a little bit. I don't want to fully throw it out, but being in that same room at a card show, being in that LCS with fellow customers and the proprietor, right? Again, loving having people on doing, I'll say it, extraordinary things in the hobby. We didn't touch much on that during this half of the conversation, but next week, part 2, we're going to talk about the special show that Nick and MeanDaddy Sports Cards are putting on, and it's, going to be the first one of its kind. I'll tease you with that. But great guy, glad he made some time. He's a busy man, doing a lot of different things too. So Nick Barton will have part 2 next week. Let's get our Hobbies Are People announcer of the week and come down the home stretch and wrap up this week's episode.
Time for our Hobby is the People announcer of the week.
Hey, it's Chris Carlin, formerly from Upper Deck, now with Collectors. Remember, the hobby is the people.
If you'd like to be the Hobby is the People announcer of the week, do a WAV or MP3 file and send it to sportscardnationpc@gmail.com.
Say goodnight, Kane.